Steve brought up the M word, and there was some news surrounding our friends from up north this week. One had to do with the penalty that was already enforced at the beginning of last season for Jim Harbaugh and the recruiting violations, but there was a further explanation that I saw, a detailed list. I didn't read it verbatim, every word, on 247 Sports about the process of the investigation, what was discovered, and why Harbaugh was fined or suspended for the 3 games. What is more important and more interesting to everyone is, of course, going forward with the Connor Stallions investigation and it being leaked this week that there is an indication that there would be a postseason ban in the future for Michigan. They will challenge that ban. That's being reported, a 1 to 2 year ban. Therefore, by the time the infractions committee gets a hold of it, it would not affect the 2024 season, certainly. And so, what do you guys think about the latest concerning our Michigan friends?
I'll let Steve go.
Well, it's just wait and see at this point. I mean, I think it's just you just have to kind of accept that, that I mean, I don't understand why it's taken 9 months and we're still at this point where you're waiting for some kind of resolution. I would think that something should be resolved on this, anytime. And I love Chris Ballas from the Wolverine, the Rivals site, I think, or maybe it's the On3 site there now. He's like, the notice of allegations is coming and Michigan is ready to fight, ready to fight. It's like me, when I live east of Columbus off I-70. So when I have to go to Columbus for interviews, it's about a 35-minute drive. And when I go down my road and get on I-70, it's 70 miles per hour, but nobody out here goes 70 miles per hour. Once you're outside like 256 exit, it's like the Autobahn. You can, pretty much go as fast as you want. So if I set my cruise at 83 miles per hour and the cop sitting there at the 310 exit gets me going by at 83 miles per hour and pulls me over, I really don't have a leg to stand on. I went 83 miles per hour. It's kind of prima facie, or whatever that Latin term is. It's like, these are the facts and this is the penalty for what you did. And there's no disputing the fact that that's what you did. Well, the same thing applies here with these guys. There's just no disputing what they did. It's the open and shut case. It's just how big of a book does the NCAA want to throw at Michigan? Do they really want to cripple the program, or do they really just want to say, oh, boys will be boys. What use technology to beat people. Wow. Great job by you. Don't do it again. Don't anybody else try it. I mean, if they don't throw the book at them, then it's kind of like you do whatever you like. It should be a free for all. So who knows? And, it's going to be, we've talked about it for months. We'll see what happens when the day comes.
I think it's interesting that I think at this point, Central Michigan has fired as many people as Michigan has for being involved in this. In terms of the assistant coaches, the report coming out that Central Michigan has let go their quarterbacks coach, who was a student assistant under Jim Harbaugh at Michigan years ago. And, so there's some interesting tie-ins there. But in terms of Michigan fighting whatever gets handed down, they have said they're going to fight every step of the way last year. And then every time it came to fighting, they backed down. Remember the temporary restraining order to get Jim Harbaugh coaching against Penn State or whatever, they backed down. Once the evidence is presented to them, they stop fighting. And
yeah,
they put up the fight until the evidence is put forth. They put up the fight while there's an investigation going on. They do not put up a fight once the evidence is provided to them. So, I still believe if they start out 3-2 this season, they're going to self-impose a postseason ban. That way they can just try to get ahead of this. You lose to Texas. If you lose to USC at home, you're kind of like, you know what? Let's be the bigger men here. Let's be Michigan men. Let's take the high road. But in terms of, I know there are already penalties being talked about. That's not going to be part of the notice of allegations. You can make assumptions based on precedents and what those allegations are, what they have led to in the past. So what will happen is if these notice of allegations do come out this week, Michigan has 90 days to respond, and then the NCAA has 90 days to respond. And then if there is any other kind of litigation or whatever, but Michigan, they're not going to open themselves to, I don't think, any type of legal court thing, because right now coaches aren't cooperating that are no longer there. And if you start opening it up to legal stuff, then they might have to, and then you might really get into trouble. So I think you try to, if they can get there 1 year, then do it. But I think the NCAA has come out and said that they don't really want to be as harsh as they have been in the past, but they gave Michigan 3 years for something that is much less serious than what is happening for the past 3 years. So they're not gonna give them concurrent sentences. They're not gonna be like, oh, you get 3 years for this year and 3 years for this year, so you can serve them all at the same time. These will probably be consecutive penalties, and I don't know what they'll be, but it's not. It used to be, and you guys remember this. It used to be like probation was the big penalty, and vacating wins was like, that's nothing. Now it's like, because Michigan has a national championship, everybody wants the vacated wins, and the probation is nothing. And I think the interesting thing about scholarship reductions, it used to be like 5 would be a significant reduction with 85 players. What is the equivalent to that now with a roster of 105? What used to be 5, does it need to be 15 now? And is that too much? So I think there's some interesting things there that we have to consider as well.
Yeah, I thought was really kind of interesting is underneath the tweets by Chris Ballas, the Michigan people, were kind of skeptical, and one of them even blurted out, "Well, I hope the attorneys we get to fight this are better than the ones we had in November." So, it's even they have realism to know that something's coming. We just don't know what.
I mean, Jim Harbaugh wanted to fight 2 suspensions and ended up not fighting them. So, like, once the evidence gets presented, I mean, it's hard to argue with that.
The NCAA has forced vacated wins in the past in situations that did not affect, they were rules violations, but they did not directly impact the games on the field. And they forced those vacated situations, Penn State and Jerry Sandusky being the most egregious criminal act pretty much that we can think of. But what did that have to do with the play on the field? Zero. Why are you vacating wins? I went on a tirade about that yesterday. And then the Ohio State situation in 2010. This seems to be exactly the case in which the cheating was direct to the field performance. This is all about vacating wins.
Yep.
Yeah.
Should be.
And what is the level of quote unquote cheating or evidence that is needed? Is it every ticket for a game that was bought, like for an opponent, or is it just the games where it's that the biggest game? So I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but if it's using an illegal player or using an illegal coach, is it anything they're involved in? They're done with. So that's another thing where they have to figure out, what exactly do we want to do here? How much do we want to do? How much harm do you want to bring? And how annoyed have you been at Michigan through this whole thing and the previous thing? Like they've been dragging their feet on both things. I've seen Michigan fans talking about how the NCAA can't do anything about the CFP moving forward. Like that's a totally separate entity. But I will read from you one of the teleconferences last year, when, if we remember, James Madison, Jacksonville State weren't able to be ranked in the college football playoff rankings because they were in a transition period. And so the question was, there's reports and rumors that the NCAA could waive that transition period and make them eligible to be part of the rankings. And the answer from Bill Hancock regarding all of this ties into what we're talking about here. They said the committee is instructed to rank the teams that are eligible without any conditions to compete in bowl games. The logic, frankly, is to not leave out other teams that are eligible regarding the rankings. The purpose of the rankings is to identify teams that are definitely able to play in the postseason. So that's the logic. So if the NCAA says you are not eligible to play in the postseason, the College Football Playoff Committee will not be talking about them.
Makes sense.
And not ranking them.
There you go.
It should make sense, you mean, Steve?
It should.
It should.
It should.
Yeah. If we put those two things together, that was a good blurb there, Tony. There's the act of cheating, and then there is the estimated impact of the cheating, which, based on everything I saw from former players, current coaches, all of that, NFL and collegiate included, ranged all over the map. Nobody could agree on the impact. It went all the way from it doesn't matter to yeah, absolutely, this matters. This, and the breakdown of how it would play out and the advantage you would have. So that surprised me that there couldn't be a stronger consensus on how much this impacts on the field.
Well,
on the other hand, go ahead, Tony.
Well, I'm just going to say, there have been games vacated because players played in them when they shouldn't have, regardless of the impact they had in those games. The fact that they were on the field is enough to get that game removed.
And then to me, I seem to be in the minority. Let's take the Tom Brady, what did they call that when they pumped up the football? Deflategate? Yeah. Do I personally believe that impacted Tom Brady? The guy's thrown for 60,000 yards. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. He's done it a million times. They went out and beat the Colts in the playoffs 45-7. Do I think that whatever ounce of deflation that he wanted to grip the ball, but do I think that really impacted? No. But why did he do it? And it was done, and it was cheating. Therefore, there has to be some repercussion. There in that case, I don't remember what it was, but you cheat for only one reason. There's only one reason to cheat. And then my last question is, I want to know how much this permeated through the coaching staff. There is no way that Connor Stallions, to me, and I might be wrong, did this as a rogue individual, and this information went no further. Didn't impact anything. Nobody knew about it. The defensive coordinator, the assistant coaches, they had no idea. They didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense.
No, none at all. None at all.
So that cheating, it's one thing if your company, whatever the industry, you can't control everyone, but the company has to be accountable. If you've got somebody who did something illegal in a dealing with another company, let's say a client or something, but you knew nothing about it, you still have to take the hit for it. But at least there's an understanding. Okay, the CEO, the rest of the company had no idea that this guy was a rogue guy doing X, Y, and Z. However, if you determine to me, that's a completely other level of penalty if this is known by other defensive coaches and can be proven.
Yeah, and that would be a huge detriment to Michigan's case. But the NCAA also says the head coach doesn't need to know to have known. You should have known, whether you know or not. You should have known, and the head coach is no longer there to punish. So I don't know if it's just well, you know what, our job is done here. It would be one thing, and I said at the time, Michigan should fire Jim Harbaugh. Just as he's leaving, fire him. Ohio State fired Jim Tressel, and that kind of that's a pound of flesh that the NCAA no longer needs. And they did not get their pound of flesh from Michigan regarding the head coach.